Well, John Hanna, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline. Tell us, Iran and Saudi Arabia have made an agreement brokered by China. What's your reaction to this?
Well, from my perspective, Chris, it's a worrisome event, not just because of how it undermines U.S. and Israeli policy regarding the current effort to isolate the Iranian regime and keep pressure on Iran as its nuclear program advances, as its efforts to support the Russian war effort in Ukraine continue apace. But the new and deeply concerning factor here is the Chinese role in all of this, which was a surprise to everybody. We knew the Saudis and Iranians had been in discussions for the better part of 2 years, but we thought they were through other intermediaries in the Middle East. To suddenly find, kind of as a surprise, that our new great power competitor, the primary threat to the American-led world order, China, was so central to this deal that involves not only our worst enemy in the Middle East, but bringing them together with one of our oldest Arab friends and allies and partners in the region, Saudi Arabia, is a new and worrisome development about China's own penetration and influence in this critical part of the world.
And what does this say about the U.S. influence in the region going forward?
I think it's a bad sign, but a confirmation of a trend that's been at work almost since the day the Biden administration came in, where it reversed so many of its predecessors' policy, simply in terms of a much weaker, almost appeasing policy toward our worst adversary in this region, the Islamic regime in Iran, that poses such a huge threat to all of our interests in the Middle East, and a real new level of hostility and contempt for some of our traditional partners, with Saudi Arabia, perhaps our most influential Arab partner, at the top of the Biden administration's a list of countries that it was seeking to pull away from in a way that I think has completely undermined the confidence of our old friends in the region, who now, without knowing that the United States really has their back against their primary threat and adversary, the Iranian regime, are now engaged in all kinds of other forms of self-help to try and compensate for their lack or loss of a U.S. security guarantor, and engaging in all kinds of things like trying to make whatever deal they can to hold the Iranian wolf at bay, at the same time opening the door to influence from our primary adversary on the global scene, China, to come in and try and help them keep the Iranians at bay when they know they can no longer rely on the United States to play that role.
You visited Saudi Arabia recently with a delegation, met with many of the leaders there in Saudi Arabia. Is this a sense, as you mentioned, of them just trying to hedge their bets and try to find a way to manage their own interest here in the region?
I think that's absolutely what this is, Chris. If the Saudis had their druthers, the relationship with the United States would be strong, secure. They'd have enormous trust and confidence in it. Unfortunately, that has all eroded drastically over the last 2 years. That was the message we heard when we were in Riyadh. While they know they can never replace what the United States does for them on the security front, if that security partnership, trust and confidence are not there, they made clear to us that they're going to have to engage in all kinds of hedging behavior in terms of how they compensate for that loss of confidence in the security role of the United States in this very difficult and tough neighborhood.
How does this complicate things for Israel? One of the goals of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was actually to bring Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords, and he's also been warning about Iran's nuclear program getting closer and closer to weapons-grade uranium. Where does this leave Israel?
I think it's a blow. It's a blow both to Israel, but also, obviously, as I said, to the United States. Listen, it will complicate the regional situation to the extent the Saudis now feel they're on the line to make nice with the Iranians, to not be as confrontational to Iran in terms of trying to contain its nuclear program, the rise of its influence. This is bad for a campaign of Israel and the United States to try and counter Iran's malign influence in that region. And I also think it could complicate the effort to press forward and take advantage of this opportunity to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Although I don't think it by any means has eliminated that prospect. As I found out when I was in Saudi Arabia, the real key to unlocking the door to a Saudi willingness to have a rapprochement with Israel is to first have a rapprochement between the United States and Saudi Arabia, that it's that bilateral relationship. It's Saudi Arabia's ability to know that America has its back that will allow it at the end of the day to really take some risks in terms of normalizing with Israel. So we've still got to get that relationship right. And I hope this deal with the Iranians, with China in the middle, serves as a wake-up call for the Biden administration, because America still does have a lot of goodwill. We are the preferred strategic partner of choice for all of our friends in the region. We have a lot of military capabilities and assets. If we're prepared to do the right thing, to kind of reassess our policies, get tougher with the Iranians, and at least come halfway to meeting the security needs and concerns of our partners in that region, I have no doubt that a determined president, a determined administration can set this right and move the ball forward on both the Saudi-Israeli rapprochement, but also on this absolutely critical effort to global security, to contain and counter the Iranian regime, and particularly that Iranian nuclear program.
Two other questions, John. Where does this leave some of the other partners in the Abraham Accords, the UAE and Bahrain? And also, what impact could this have on the war in Yemen between Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, but also Iran as their proxy?
Well, Chris, one of the reasons I have some hope that there is still life left in the possibility of advancing the Saudi-Israel relationship is because of the example of the Emirates. The Emirates have already reopened their embassy in Iran quite a while ago. They've opened up trade relationships with Iran. They too have, because of their concern about American backing, have sought to really de-escalate their own conflict with the Iranians. And yet at the same time, as that process has gone forward with Iran, the Emirates have been going mostly gangbusters in terms of the normalization effort with Israel to continue building up their trade and economic and cultural relations. So I'm hoping that the Saudis will be able to walk this line as well, trying to de-escalate with Iran and contain that conflict while at the same time being able to pursue their national interest with Israel. On the Yemen front, listen, I think, you know, we can hope for the best, that the Iranians will actually finally cooperate in constraining these radical Houthi allies and proxy force that they have there on the Arabian Peninsula, right on Saudi Arabia's border. I don't hold out a lot of hope for that. Luckily, we've been in something like a ceasefire or a truce for the last year that thankfully has reduced the amount of human suffering in Yemen, and we all pray that we can get to a final resolution that both protects the stability and security of the vital, crucially important Arabian Peninsula, while at the same time giving the Yemeni people some prospect and hope for stability and a better future that they don't have right now. But if we're depending on that, on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force to be a serious partner in that effort, I would, I have serious doubts about how far we're going to get in that. So I do think we need to be cautious and careful before we start breaking out the champagne glasses.
Any final thoughts, John, on this new major development here in the region?
No, just what I've said, Chris, that this should be a real wake-up call for the United States. This is not something we should welcome. Relieving pressure on the Iranians, our most dangerous adversary in this part of the world, not only to us, but to our best ally, Israel. But again, this really new crucial variable in this new era of great power competition, to have our largest and most serious global competitor waltz into the Middle East and take up this role of a major diplomatic force in the region's power politics, increasing its influence and penetration with what used to be our best friends in the region, I think ought to be a very worrisome sign for the United States. And we've got to really get our act together. And I deeply hope that the administration will reassess its policies of the last couple of years, which I think have only hurt and unfortunately undermined American interest in this critical part of the world.
Yeah. Well, John Hanna, thanks for your expertise and analysis. Thank you very much for being with us on CBN News.
It's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me.